Sometimes the people we think we know are complete strangers, and sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. In parts 1 and 2, we watched Margaret Calloway's world fall apart when she discovered her driver, David Monroe, wasn't just a man behind a wheel. He was a man she and her wealthy friends had destroyed. A man who had lost everything, including his wife, because of their greed. But what Margaret didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that David hadn't spent 5 years driving her around by accident. He had been planning something. Something that would make that dinner party look like child's play. And the phone call Margaret made the morning after visiting David's apartment opened a door she would never be able to close. If you're just joining us, stop right now and go watch parts 1 and 2. This is a story you need to experience from the beginning. And if you've been with us this whole time, drop a comment and tell us what you think David's real plan is. Was he really there for forgiveness? Or was there always something darker at play? Let us know what you think. Margaret sat in her study, with the folder David had shown her spread across her desk. She had been staring at the same page for 20 minutes. An email chain from 7 years ago between executives at Grayson Pharmaceuticals and partners at David's former firm. The names were mostly unfamiliar to her, except one, Jonathan Pierce. She knew that name. Not from business, not from charity boards, from her personal life. Jonathan Pierce was her financial advisor. He had been managing her investments for over a decade. She trusted him completely, and his name was all over the documents David had shown her. Her hands trembled as she picked up her phone and dialed his number. It rang 3 times before he answered. "Margaret, good morning, what can I do for you?" His voice was smooth, professional, warm. The voice of someone who had never given her a reason to doubt him. "Jonathan, I need to ask you about something," Margaret said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "Grayson Pharmaceuticals. The merger that happened 7 years ago." There was a pause, a brief hesitation that Margaret might have missed if she hadn't been listening for it. "That was a long time ago," Jonathan said carefully. "Why are you asking about it now?" "Because I just found out my driver used to work in private equity. He was involved in that deal, and his name was destroyed because of it." Another pause, longer this time. "David Monroe," Jonathan said quietly. It wasn't a question. Margaret's heart sank. "You knew." "I knew who he was." "Yes," Jonathan admitted. "I recognized him the first time I saw him at one of your events. But Margaret, that situation was complicated. There were a lot of moving parts." "He showed me documents," Margaret said, her voice rising. "Emails, evidence that the drug trial data was fabricated, that people knew it was fraud and pushed the deal through anyway." "Margaret, you have to understand. Your name is in those emails, Jonathan." Silence. When Jonathan spoke again, his voice had changed. The warmth was gone. "What exactly did David tell you?" "That he tried to stop the merger, that he went to his partners and they destroyed him for it, that people made millions while he lost everything." Margaret's voice cracked. "His wife died, Jonathan. She died because they couldn't afford her medical care." "That's unfortunate," Jonathan said. "But it's not the whole story." Margaret stood up, pacing now. "Then tell me the whole story," Jonathan sighed. "David Monroe was brilliant. No one's denying that. But he was also reckless. He didn't understand how these things work. Sometimes, in business, you have to make difficult choices. The Grayson deal was going to save thousands of jobs. It was going to keep 2 companies afloat. With a drug that didn't work," Margaret shot back. "A drug that could have killed people. The drug never made it to market," Jonathan said. "The system worked. Regulators caught it. No one was hurt. Except David. David made himself a target," Jonathan said coldly. "He could have kept his mouth shut. He could have taken his share of the fees and moved on like everyone else. But he had to be the hero. He had to blow the whistle. And yes, we protected ourselves. That's what you do in business, Margaret. You protect your interests." Margaret felt sick. "We? You were part of it?" "I advised on the financial side," Jonathan said. "I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't lie to regulators. I did my job. And when David became a liability, I did what I had to do to protect my clients, including you. What does that mean? It means the money you've been living on for the past decade, the investments that paid for your house and your lifestyle and your charity galas, a significant portion of that came from fees generated by deals like Grayson. So before you start judging people, Margaret, remember that you benefited too. The words hit her like a slap. She sank back into her chair. I didn't know. And that's exactly why it worked, Jonathan said. Look, David Monroe is a cautionary tale. He's a reminder of what happens when you put principles above pragmatism. I'm sorry his life fell apart. I genuinely am. But that doesn't change the fact that he made his own choices. And now he's making new ones, Margaret said quietly. What do you mean? He took a job driving me around, Jonathan, for 5 years. Don't you think that's strange? Don't you think there's a reason he stayed? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tight. What are you saying? I'm saying, I think David has been planning something, Margaret said. And I think that dinner party was just the beginning. Margaret, listen to me very carefully, Jonathan said. If David Monroe is planning anything, you need to distance yourself from him immediately. Do you understand? Don't talk to him. Don't engage. Just cut ties and move on. Why? What are you afraid of? I'm not afraid, Jonathan said quickly. I'm being cautious. And you should be too. Then he hung up. Margaret sat alone in her study, her mind racing. Jonathan's reaction had confirmed what she'd suspected. There was more to this story. And whatever David was planning, it involved more than just showing up at a dinner party. She opened her laptop and started searching. She typed in David Monroe's name and began reading everything she could find. Old news articles, court documents, SEC filings. The official story was exactly what Jonathan had said. David had been blamed for the Grayson merger. He'd been investigated, eventually cleared, but only after his reputation was destroyed. But as Margaret dug deeper, she found something else. A series of articles from 2 years ago. Small pieces, barely noticed, about a lawsuit. David Monroe versus Hartley, Pierce and Associates. Her breath caught. Hartley, Richard Hartley, the man who had been at her dinner party. The man who had gone pale when David walked in. And Pierce, Jonathan Pierce, her financial advisor. David had sued them. The case had been settled out of court, the terms were confidential, but the lawsuit had been filed, which meant David had evidence, real evidence, enough to make them pay. Margaret's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the address below. Come alone. David. Her heart pounded. She stared at the address. It was across town. An office building she didn't recognize. Every instinct told her not to go, to call someone, to stay away. But she couldn't. She had to know the truth. If you think Margaret should go meet David, comment, go. If you think she should stay away, comment, don't go. Let us know what you would do in her situation. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now, because part 4 is going to reveal the endgame, and you don't want to miss it. Margaret drove across town in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The address led her to a modest office building in a business district she rarely visited. She parked and walked inside. The lobby was quiet. A directory on the wall listed various small businesses, accountants, consultants, law firms. And then she saw it. Monroe Consulting Group, 5th floor. Her pulse quickened. She took the elevator up. The doors opened to a simple hallway with glass doors at the end. She walked forward and pushed them open. Inside was a small office, clean, professional, and sitting behind a desk, looking every bit the executive he once was David Monroe. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing. Margaret stopped in the doorway. "You have your own consulting firm?" "I started it 2 years ago," David said. "After the settlement." "The lawsuit," Margaret said, "against Richard and Jonathan." David nodded. "Sit down, Margaret. There's a lot you need to know." She sat. David opened a laptop and turned it toward her. On the screen was a spreadsheet, columns of numbers, dates, transactions, What am I looking at? Margaret asked. The truth, David said. For the past 5 years, while I was driving you around, I was also building a case, not just against Richard and Jonathan, but against everyone involved in the Grayson deal, and others like it. He clicked to another screen. More names, more transactions. Margaret saw several names she recognized. Guests from her dinner party, people she'd known for years. I started as your driver because I needed access, David continued. You hosted parties, dinners, events. The same people showed up again and again, and they talked, they drank, they got comfortable, and I listened. Margaret's stomach turned. You were spying on us. I was gathering evidence, David corrected. Evidence of ongoing fraud, insider trading, bribery. These people didn't stop with Grace and Margaret. They just got better at hiding it. He pulled up another document, an email chain, recent, from just 3 months ago. Margaret saw Jonathan's name, and Richard's, and 2 others. They're doing it again, David said. Another merger, another company with fabricated data. Only this time, it's a medical device manufacturer. And if the deal goes through and the device fails, people won't just lose money, they'll lose their lives. Margaret couldn't breathe. What are you going to do? I'm going to the SEC, David said. I have everything I need. Emails, financial records, testimony from whistleblowers inside the companies. It's airtight. Then why are you telling me this? Margaret asked. David looked at her carefully. Because you have a choice to make. What kind of choice? You're complicit, Margaret, David said gently. Maybe not directly, but your money is tied up in this. Your financial advisor is one of the main players. And when this breaks, and it will break, your name is going to come up. Margaret felt tears stinging her eyes. I didn't know. I believe you, David said, but that won't matter to the press, or to the people who lost money in the last scandal. You'll be guilty by association. So what do I do? David slid a folder across the desk. You cooperate. You give a statement. You testify about what Jonathan told you, about the deals he made with your money, without your knowledge. You help build the case. Margaret stared at the folder. If I do this, I'll lose everything. Maybe, David said. Or maybe you'll keep your integrity. That's worth something. Margaret opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, a cooperation agreement, a witness statement form. Her hands shook. Why did you really invite yourself into my life? She asked quietly. That first day you applied to be my driver, was it always about this? David leaned back. Honestly, at first, I just needed a job. But when I realized who you were connected to, yes, I saw an opportunity. Not for revenge, but for justice. These people destroyed my life, Margaret. They killed my wife. And they're still out there doing the same thing to others. The dinner party, Margaret said, that wasn't about forgiveness at all, was it? It was about making them see me, David said. Making them remember what they did. Letting them know that I wasn't gone, that I was still watching, and that eventually there would be consequences. You wanted them scared. I wanted them accountable, David said. There's a difference. Margaret looked down at the papers. Her entire life was about to change. Her friends would turn on her. Her social standing would evaporate. She might even face legal consequences herself. But she thought about David's wife, about the thousands of people who lost their jobs, about the people who would be hurt by the next fraudulent deal if someone didn't stop it. And she thought about the person she'd become, the person who invited her driver to a party to humiliate him, the person who measured worth by bank accounts and job titles. She picked up a pen. Where do I sign? David's expression softened. Not quite a smile, but something close. Relief, maybe, or respect. Here, he said, pointing. Margaret signed her name. And with that single action, everything changed. 3 days later, the story broke. Major news outlets, financial networks. The SEC announced a massive investigation into insider trading and fraud, involving multiple companies and executives. Names were named. Richard Hartley, Jonathan Pierce, 7 others, all facing criminal charges. Margaret's name appeared too. but not as a defendant, as a cooperating witness. Her phone rang constantly, former friends demanding explanations, lawyers advising her to stay silent, reporters camped outside her house. She ignored them all. Instead, she sat in her study and watched the news coverage. She saw Jonathan being led out of his office in handcuffs. She saw Richard's lawyer giving a statement on the courthouse steps, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Her doorbell rang. She almost didn't answer, but something made her get up and walk to the door. When she opened it, David was standing there. "I wanted to check on you," he said. "See how you're holding up." Margaret stepped aside. "Come in." They sat in the living room, the same room where the dinner party had happened, the same room where everything had started to unravel. "How does it feel?" David asked. "Terrifying," Margaret admitted. "But right. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing something that matters." David nodded. "It gets easier." "Does it?" "No," David said with a small smile. "But you learn to live with it." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Margaret said, "I need to ask you something." "Okay. If I hadn't signed those papers, if I had refused to cooperate, what would you have done?" David looked at her for a long time. "I would have proceeded without you. The case would have been harder, but I had enough evidence. I didn't need you, Margaret." "Then why give me the choice?" "Because I wanted to see who you really were," David said. "Whether you were like them, or whether there was something more. And you proved you're more," David said. "That counts for something." Margaret walked David to the door. As he stepped outside, he turned back. "There's something else," he said. "Something I didn't tell you." Margaret's stomach tightened. "What?" "The investigation is bigger than just Richard and Jonathan. There are more people involved. People you know, people you trust." "Who?" "That's what Part 4 is about," David said. "Because the person at the very top of this, the one who orchestrated everything, is someone you've known your entire life. And when you find out who it is, it's going to destroy you." Margaret's blood ran cold. "David, tell me." But he was already walking away. "Watch the news tomorrow," he called back. "You'll see." And then he was gone. Who is the person at the top? Who has Margaret trusted her entire life that's been behind all of this? And what happens when that truth comes out? If you want to find out, comment Part 4 right now and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because the next part reveals the identity of the mastermind behind everything. And trust us, you are not going to see this coming. What started as a simple dinner party has become something much bigger, a conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of power. And Margaret Calloway is right in the middle of it. Watch out for Part 4. The final revelation is going to change everything you thought you knew about this story. Comment below where you're watching from and tell us who you think the mastermind is. We'll see you in Part 4.